Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As always, I have a fantastic and fascinating guest with me today who really is an expert on overcoming obstacles and finding his personal power. His name is David Falco. He is the founder and owner of the Inner Anthem Academy. He has always been an underdog, which caused him to be creative and resourceful, including building a brick and mortar gym using old equipment that he purchased from garage sales, thrift stores, and Craigslist. That's pretty resourceful. With over 16 years experience in the fitness industry, he went from making $15 a session to building a multi-six-figure income online program, which includes the United States, Italy, and Korea. David's mission is to help people see their challenges as blessings rather than burdens, and to overcome self-sabotage with a focus on overcoming their personal demons. David, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is such an honor to talk to you. Your story is just so amazing. You grew up a little rough. You had a lot of challenges in your own personal life. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and tell us your story. Tell us where you came from, how you started, and how you came to build this incredible business. And I'm guessing it wasn't a smooth trajectory. You probably had some ups and downs along the way.
It's never smooth. It's always a trial and error. So I grew up in a small town, Sand Springs, Oklahoma. It's just 10 minutes outside of Tulsa. I came from a divorced family. My parents got divorced when I was in around like second grade. I don't remember exactly.
Wow.
I decided to live with my father at the time. And what was even crazy when I share this is I remember the day when my parents came in and they sat both me and my sister down and they explained to me what was going on. And I say crazy. The most interesting thing that they decided was to let us determine on who we reside with, who we go and live with.
Wow.
And now, me, as an adult now thinking it's like, man, that's a big decision for, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, however old I was at the time. But I remember sitting down thinking at that particular time and at that age, like me and my father were into sports. He had me doing everything. And so I spent the majority of my time with him. And I remember very deductively thinking as a 7-year-old, it's like, it's like, well, I have a lot of fun with dad. I think that's going to be the best choice because we always have fun together. I'm going to go live with dad.
Mm.
And so that was my reasoning for moving with him. But my parents split up. They've both been remarried now too as well. But that kind of began the troubles, the complexities my childhood. And so I think I have a rebellious nature at heart, a little bit of anti-authority characteristics. And so that also led me to struggle with the transition and the dynamics of when my father got remarried. Both sides of my family now, though, they've been married, they've stayed married, and we get along great. But during that transition, there was a lot of confusion, a lot of, I think, just unawareness of like what was to be expected and what was really going on. And, as a teenager, I know we all think that, life is one way, but really it's not. And leading up to that, I ended up running away twice
Wow.
as a teenager because I just was, like I said, I struggled with the dynamic of the household when he did remarry. And like I said, I have a little bit of a rebellious nature at heart anyways, which actually lended itself well though as an entrepreneur in the future years now that I think about it. So I ended up running away twice. When I say twice, the first time was I was still under the age of 18. My daddy told me, he says, if you don't come back, we're going to, call the cops, have you come picked up, and then we're going to throw you into Raider, which was a correctional facility in town as a the juvie. And so I was like, well, I don't want to do that. Ended up coming back. But then a year later, there was another disagreement. And then I was like, all right, that's it. and then I bounced and I never came back. Uh,
Wow.
I was 18 years old. I finished out high school, and then after high school, I moved from Tulsa to Oklahoma City to pursue, college and all that other stuff. And my father and I, just to kind of like to condense this and give it the meat and the potatoes, like I really didn't speak with him other than a couple hours on Thanksgiving,
Mm,
a couple hours on Christmas, for 18 years. But thankfully, I'm very pleased to let people know that it's like our relationship is healed, and it's
mhm,
gotten better and it's continued to thrive. But it was 18 years that I missed out on
mhm,
that. On that relationship. And so I didn't really have any father figures, quote unquote,
mhm.
growing up. So I had to do a lot of learning on my own,
Right.
a lot of trial and error on my own. Um, and like I said, overcoming mistakes and adapting to circumstances and situations with not having really much male guidance in my life. So did the best that I could, and, as anybody does. And but that was a lot of things that happened there. I think affected me later on in positive ways, but also in negative ways too, as well.
Mhm. That must have been so incredibly difficult to be able to make decisions when you're completely on your own like that, and you really don't have that strong of a background or father figure or anyone to really rely on. And it's got to be so confusing because who do you trust?
That was actually the biggest thing. Is like I think emotionally, and not only on my father's side, but my mother's side too as well. I always thought it's like, well, if they if they weren't able to figure it out and stick it out, and all they're doing is thinking about themselves, and I'm just going to think, for myself too as well. And so I really didn't, uh, um, like I said, have anybody to turn to and open up. uh,
Mhm,
like I said, my relationship with both of them is great, and but
mhm,
like at that time, it's like I just felt either cocooned or, again, like I said,
mhm,
isolated. And I never really just like never sought out counsel from either one of
mhm,
them at all.
mhm,
And so it really was just a trial and an error type of lifestyle growing up. But I think that also benefited me, um,
mhm,
further on. Like I said, being able to be adaptive, being
mhm,
able to be resilient, being
mhm,
able to make mistakes, but also learn from those
mhm,
mistakes and move forward too as well.
mhm. Well, your solving skills must be incredible.
Well, incredible. I would say resilient.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's just I would say my mentality would be incredible, because just from a problem and solution oriented type of thinker, is like
Mhm,
I don't even know like how we may fix the problem, but I just know it's like the answer is going to be out there. And so we all have a decision to make, whether we continue to pursue what those answers are, or we
mhm,
just throw our hands up and give up. And I've never been to one to just say, screw it. That's one of the biggest things that I work with my clients and my students, is being apathetic. A lot
mhm.
of times people come into the program, they're like, well, why bother? Well,
Oh,
I'm too old, or I'm too far out of shape, or I'm too overweight, or who even cares? I've been married for X amount of years. Who am I trying to impress? And so they have this big pendulum swing mindset, and being apathetic of like, who cares? Why bother? And that type of attitude doesn't really get them far. And that's one of the things that we work on in regards to their personality and the way that they think, is that there
mhm,
are specific reasons that are important enough. There are specific circumstances that are going to need you to be in better shape and take care of
mhm,
yourself. And those reasons are what we want to focus on. That's why. So, but from a problem solving standpoint, it's just like, where there's commitment, there's creativity.
mhm, mhm,
One thing that I got from a book from Robert Kiyosaki long time ago. This is actually a book referred to me, but from one of my clients. And the one line that stuck with me probably now for like 20 something years is his rich dad
mhm,
never let him say the word can't. And instead, he replaced that with a question. You ask yourself, well, how can I? So when we're looking
mhm,
at situations, when we're looking at circumstances, when we're looking at these problems to solve, it's not, I can't do that. Flip
mhm,
it. You ask yourself, how can I? And then your brain turns on, and you just start
mhm,
to seek out and look for possible solutions, rather
mhm,
than just accepting on where you're
mhm.
at. you are.
Yeah, it is amazing how incredibly malleable and receptive our brains really are when we just flip the switch a little bit, or the script.
Yep.
And I find it really fascinating, though, when you're talking about, some of your clients who are, they come in and they're apathetic. It's like, well, why even bother? Blah, blah, blah. But yet they had enough
Yeah.
desire or motivation to make that first step and to
Pain.
come to you in the first place. I mean, that little disconnect there is very interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it desire. I would
Mm,
even people. There's two types of motivators. There's pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. And
mm,
the majority of people that come in here aren't necessarily like, yeah, I wanted to get into shape because I want to have all these wonderful things happen and you just look great, feel good. What they're actually doing is they're just so unhappy with where they're at, like,
mhm,
sick of dealing with the lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, their
mhm,
body hurting. They don't respect themselves, or their family doesn't respect. There's all the negative. The majority of the people that come in there are dealing with that, rather than, man, I want to look this way and I want to be this way
mhm,
and I want to da 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 da. They're more of just, I'm just so tired of feeling this way and I don't like it anymore. And so it's yeah, I wouldn't say it's much of a desire. It's more of just was like, I'm so tired of dealing with this pain, this guilt, this shame. And we really
mhm,
have to work with our students, like I said, from a more mental and psychological approach, rather than, okay, these exercises and these foods, blah blah blah.
mhm,
That's
mhm,
academic. You could go on YouTube, you could go on Google, you could teach yourself those things easily. Like I said, what we focus on is more on is like the way that they're
mhm,
thinking, the way that they're acting from a day to day, why, like what are their motivators. Um, and so it's a more of I would say a reverse approach, but a lot of people think it's we do this, but when actually we're doing this.
mhm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So you're basically changing their mindset.
Yeah, and I think nutrition and fitness are just two of the tools
Mhm,
that we utilize. They're the two of the main tools, but it's
mhm,
like this has so much more about being, a specific type of person, is like who you need to become to
mhm,
achieve the type of lifestyle,
mhm,
the type of body, the type of health and fitness that that you think that you want. It's about becoming a person rather than, what do I need to do? It's about like, who do I need to be?
mhm. So basically, it's about addressing the person's belief system as
Yes,
well as their self-image.
yes, thousand
And
1000%. Three of the core pillars that I talk to our students about is, number one, we need to address their skill set,
mhm,
obviously. And these could either be hard skills, like I just mentioned, the
mhm,
educational side on, like they said, exercise and nutrition. Those are hard skills, but also the soft skills, their emotional state.
mm,
We address as, how do they deal with coping? Why
mhm,
do they get in specific, like handling triggers, setting
mhm,
boundaries and expectations, overcoming temptation,
mhm,
communication. These are all
mhm,
soft skills. So that's
mhm,
one pillar. The second pillar is their character.
mhm,
And so it's like, is this a disciplined person? And quite interesting enough, a lot of people that I work with are disciplined, but they're applying their level of discipline to all these other areas
mhm,
of life, but not their own self development.
mm,
And so, like, especially our mothers, their mothers are just like, man, they're so great at taking care of everything and everybody else except for themselves. But when
mhm,
it comes to making sure that this is taken care of, this is taken care of, this is taken care of, this person's on time, this, blah, 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 blah. I mean, they're literally running a small level organization, making sure that everybody is needs are met, but they're putting themselves on the back burner. So, like, their character trait, but then also, like you mentioned, their belief system. So,
mhm,
skills, character, and then the beliefs. These are the three
mhm.
areas that we really hone in on and address, not, how many push-ups and squats and blah blah blah. It's really a different approach.
Okay, so right about now, all of the moms who are listening to this is hearing the hallelujah chorus in the background because of that tribute that you gave to them, as how moms are really running a small multi-dimensional organization,
Yep. And
because they are.
let me take a step back. It's not just the moms, but the father, the parents. If
Mhm,
there are two parents in the household, it is an organ. And when things are running well, it's everybody working together. When things
mhm,
aren't running well, there's typically something broken, like
mhm,
in the system. And so, like I said, even when it comes down to communication and time management and time orchestration, those are some of the two pillars that we really emphasize on our students improving, not
Mhm.
only with themselves, but also with the other people in the organization, with their
Mhm.
spouse, with their friends, with their family, with their coworkers. It's very, very, very important. But yes, of course, it's like moms have like two full-time jobs. Like they have,
Mhm.
their career if they have one, and then also, like I said, making sure that a lot of is taken care of like inside the home. But let's not neglect the men out there. I
Oh,
mean,
of
like
course not.
there. I mean, there's a lot of. It's what's interesting too now is like I think lately, probably within the last couple of years, I don't know if you're super familiar with the red pill community,
Mhm.
uh, the man sphere and all this, but it's like there are I think there's been a lot more attention drawn to the quote unquote pressures of being a man and the expectations, and we could talk about that for a long time, but I'll just say it's like when the organization is running well, I think everybody's on the same page, and when it's not running well, there's something broken,
Mhm.
and it needs to be addressed and improved.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that there's kind of like this, I don't know, a men's revolution that is happening right now, which I'm very happy to see because I think men have been, bashed way too often and for too long, not being valued. And I've had a lot of guys on my show who are actually now, mentors and men's coaches and, focusing on men's health and also creating organizations like of brotherhood where they can support each other. And I think it's beautiful to see. And I think that we're all going to be better off for it as a society.
But the whole concept of the traditional family versus kind of like where things are currently. It's real. Like I said, we could probably talk about this forever, but um, what's your stay and what's your opinion on the family in the home now currently
My
in America?
personal opinion, or,
In America, yeah, I would actually even say in America.
you know, I, I really don't think about it a lot until I see families together out in public. And a lot of times I've been seeing, or maybe I'm just my radar has been, picking up on it, seeing men with very small children, taking them out in doing the grocery shopping, taking them in the park and stuff. And to me, it just warms my heart to see men being so interactive in the children's lives. I think it's really great. I, of course, am a baby boomer and my dad was very active, but he was very busy, building the house that we lived in. And he was always working on it as well as working full time. But he did manage to take time to teach us how to swim and take us skiing and stuff. So I really it makes me happy to see that because I really think that that makes for a better childhood and again, a better society.
Sure. I think there's huge disadvantages in families and in children that are missing a father figure. I can speak to that firsthand. Uh,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily that I didn't have a father figure. I had a father figure for most of my childhood and adolescence, but is it like as I mentioned earlier, it's like then there wasn't. There was just as
Mhm.
much time. If you're looking at it as mathematically, from when I was born to when I ran away at 18 versus from when I
Mhm.
was 18 to where him and I actually healed, I was 36, so another 18 years. So there was just as much time trying to figure things out on my own without a father figure as there was when I was younger. And as I got older, and it was like the stakes are higher, right?
Right.
We're not just talking about when you're a kid and you're getting bullied at school. It's like no, it's like how are we going to present ourselves as a somebody who's beneficial to society, and what are you going to do with your life, and how are you going to make a living, et cetera, and all those things. So yeah, it's I think there's definitely advantages for when there's family household with the father around.
Mhm. Absolutely. So now tell me then in this, growing up time and everything, because that was really challenging. When did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in fitness? And I think you just handled it so I'm so impressed when I read that you were just buying old used equipment and that was so smart. Most people would have just thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to take out these huge loans. I'm going to buy all this, brand new stuff, nice and shiny, when the used equipment works just as well.
Just as well. So that was actually there's two different stories in that question. How I decided where I wanted to get into this industry. One thing my father did do is he always had me in athletics, and so growing up, I never got in trouble. I always was occupied year round with being in athletics. So when we talked earlier about, it's like, I do not have any formal education, i.e., college degree in regards to kinesiology or exercise science. What do I have? I have, 18 years, 20 something years experience in athletics. So it was a really natural transition for me. I went to college and I got my bachelor's in psychology, but with a weird twist of how things ended up. I thought I was going to go down one road as a career, and I ended up, taking this route. But when it came to when you asked me, how did you decide to do that? And the whole equipment story was, again, like being resourceful, and going back to my childhood is like where I had what I would consider less than most people. Like, I had to be resourceful. I remember there was a time in junior high, my father gave me it's like $1.25, a buck. This was back in like the early, like late 80s, early 90s. So I'd get like $1.25, $1.50 for lunch, and there we go. And I had to make it work. And there was even a point in time when I was in junior high where I was actually stealing peanut butter M&Ms from the snack bar because I couldn't afford them. And so we'd either get the ham sandwich or the slice of pizza, whatever, and that was it. And so I was still hungry, and I would either go and steal the peanut butter M&Ms, or I would literally go from table to table in the cafeteria asking individuals, hey, do you got a quarter? And I would literally, one person after the other, work my way around to where I would have enough to go get actual more food.
Wow.
For lunch. And so, like I said, like the whole what people would may consider disadvantages growing up, actually it was it was molding me into these other character traits and these other aspects of my life that I maybe wouldn't even think about or consider until later on. So going back now to the gym, it's like, yeah, I want to go do this, but I don't have all the resources to buy all this equipment and all this and that and everything. I did have a little bit, but so what I did was, just simply went on Craigslist, waited till something was available, boom, got it. Like I said, got dumbbells from the thrift store, garage sales for sure. So those were my 30 avenues to acquire the assets that I could actually use to, teach clients. And so my first facility that I went on solo, it was this 1,300 square foot brick concrete building, no air conditioning.
Oh, gee.
No heater. Like, this was like industrial, very, very raw. I remember in the wintertime, I had a client who actually had a kerosene heater. And so he would bring the heater to the gym. He left it there. I'd go in early before class, turn it on, and have it propane out, heat, just so it'd be warm enough because the barbells were freezing and everything. But it was just raw and rugged. But those are actually some of my best memories because, again, it's like just figuring out, I may not have all of this stuff, but I'm going to make it work with what I do have. And I've always kept that mentality. And so I think even now, currently, even with some computer stuff and social media platform stuff that I'm having to transition to now, again, I'm finding myself back in this situation where I don't really know how it's going to work. I just got to continue to take action and figuring out one step at a time. And my message to other people out there is like, that's how you solve these problems. It's like, not going to be just unveiled to you. It's like, you're going to have to take action, have the courage enough to step forward and do it. You're going to mess up. So you might as well get started. But when you do, it's like you're going to get some feedback and you're going to get a point of reference that you can look back on. It's like, okay, this worked, this didn't work. Let's continue doing this. Let's deal with this. And that's how life is. So,
well, that's how we learn, is by making mistakes. And you can't beat yourself up over it. The technology thing, believe me, as a baby boomer, tough. You know, I always tell people I miss the rotary phone, and I miss the days when spam was ham in a can. You know, it was just so much easier. But, you know, technology is very convenient. And so I just kind of had to suck it up and figure it out.
Yeah, yep, for sure, for sure. So it's just this is one of the biggest things. It's like, again, dealing with that apathy. People are like, how
Mhm.
am I going to do this? I've never been in shape. I've always been overweight my whole life. I don't know. I don't know. And like people are, again, that goes to their belief systems and,
Right.
and what they're telling themselves in the narrative that they're creating, which is it's only true if they continue to believe that.
Hmm.
But when we work with our students, it's like you can do this. We've seen people just like you. Like we've stacked a pile of evidence to show it's like it's possible. It's like, if
Hmm.
we can do it for them, we can do it for you. It's just you just number one need to make a decision that it is time to change, and then like I said, be willing enough to stick with it. It's like with your martial arts, it's like
Hmm.
if you would have went to those 3 classes and quit, you never would have got your black belt.
Right.
But it's just like just keep coming back, just keep showing up, just keep coming back, just keep showing up, just over. Sometimes there's a lot of admirability in having the courage to show up, knowing that you're not going to get far today.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you put enough time, energy, effort, and focus, it's like you can accomplish a lot. You really can.
I remember I had a therapist tell me one time, you know, I'd gone to the dojo. I didn't want to, but I went to the dojo, worked out, and then I went to his office afterwards. And he says, "Did you do martial arts today?" And I says, "Well, you know, I didn't feel like it. I didn't, you know, but I went anyway." And he got that, you know, that soft, you know, soothing therapy voice. And he says, "I really admire you for going anyway, even when you weren't feeling like it." And I said, "If I waited until I felt like it, I would never leave the house."
Yep, yep. So it's that I think that's the biggest misconception too, as well as like people even in my position, even my students are like, oh, it's like, how do you do it? How do you stay so motivated? This and that and everything. It's like actually, it's the complete opposite. It's like I hardly ever want to go. It's just again, it's about who you become and who you are. You're the
Hmm.
type of, we're working on you guys developing that type of belief system. It's like even though that I don't feel like it, and I don't even want to, I know that it's necessary. I know that's going to benefit me, and I know it's the right and better decision to go and do it. So we're going to do it. And I tell them all the time, you're actually going to have a whole lot more like worse and terrible workouts than ever going in there and being like, yeah, I crushed it today. Those are going to
Right.
those are going to be few and far between. They will happen, but not very often. Most of the time, it's going to be like, shit, I gotta just go through it again. And it's like, yeah, you like sucky workouts are better than no workouts. Short workouts are better than no workouts. Interrupted workouts are still better than no workouts. So you have a choice. It's like we can use what we got and figure it out, or you can tap out and quit. And quitting is not
Mhm.
going to solve the problem. So choice is yours.
So I'm going to go back to like, okay, let's talk about some of your clients who might not be, you know, who are apathetic or, oh, this isn't going to work, or I haven't done, you know, I've been overweight all my life. I've never worked out, blah, 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 you know, the whole litany. And then they just start doing it. What is their reaction when they start to see and or feel changes in their body and even in their way of thinking and their mental state, and even their relationships? Do they sense that? Can they what kind of reaction do you typically see?
That's a great question. I don't think there is a typical reaction.
Mm,
Uh, there's always two emotions in the beginning: excitement and nervousness, right?
mm,
So they're either one or the other or both simultaneously. And then about halfway in, people either still continue to stay excited or people actually become, um, I would say, just scared. I would say even scared because they're starting to realize just how bad a shape that they're in.
ah,
But there is no tip. And that's through the middle. So in therapy, we call this kind of like we call it the cloud, and then the wall, right? And so people are like, oh, it's like it's new, brand new. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Okay, I've made a decision. Yeah, let's go. First weekend, second weekend, and again, there's no normal time frame, but eventually people will mentally hit a wall, and then
mhm,
that's when everybody does. Everybody
mhm,
hits this wall, and that's when either people decide to persist and move
mhm,
forward, or they give up and quit.
Mhm.
And this is interesting. The from a female standpoint, the average American woman invests in her health 5 times a year. Why 5 times a year? Because they're always starting and stopping.
Ah,
And so it's like, how do we break that cycle? Why don't they just invest in themselves, like, and stick to it? Does that make
mhm.
sense? But they're always
It
trying,
does.
they're program hopping, or they saw this on Pinterest, or it's like, man, it's like, let
Oh,
me try these recipe. So it's like Mediterranean, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, carnivore, South Beach, Weight Watcher, da 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 da. They just program hopping when really it's
mhm,
like everything is under the umbrella of, it's like, if we eat a specific way and we have enough activity, you're going to
mhm,
better health than if you didn't.
mhm,
All falls underneath that umbrella, and people just tend to overcomplicate that. As they evolve, obviously, as they start to get results, like, people become more excited. It's like, hey,
mhm,
I can't do this. And so we start, when that shift happens, I don't know. Like I said, there is no typical answer for
mhm,
that, but eventually, as they continue to make more and more success, they start to get more and more momentum. And like I said, those beliefs, those character, and those skills get sharper and stronger. But I've also had students who've been massively successful and they're still mentally struggling. So there is no, I wouldn't say that there is a typical uh,
mhm,
timeline of evolution.
mhm.
Every case is its own, but I just know that again, I've never heard any, and I mentioned this before we started. It's like, I've never had anybody say my life is worse because I got in shape. I've never heard anybody say that.
Mhm. Well,
So,
if you ever do hear somebody say that, please let me know because I would
right.
be shocked, but we, write that down on the calendar. But I agree. I have never heard that in my life either.
So it's just and that's what things, and that's the biggest thing now too, is with us all being connected via the internet and social media,
Mhm,
is that there's this constant comparison game. I've dealt with it myself too as well, because we see these people that we know or that we've heard of and that we've seen. It's like, oh my gosh, look how well they're doing. Oh my gosh, look how far that they've come. Why haven't I? Why haven't I? Why haven't I? But we always see the end result, but we never see like the work behind it. And we're always quick to judge, and we're always quick to um, just persecute ourselves because we're not there.
mhm. Well, thank you for pointing that out because I think that's really important for the listeners to hear, and it's really important for me to hear over and over again because I can fall into that trap really easily. And now I catch myself, and it's like, wait a minute, back off. Plus, if you're seeing somebody's end result, you have no idea actually where they were in their journey
It's their
and how much they might have struggled to get there.
it's their chapter 10, and you're on chapter 1
Right.
for a lot of people. So it's and that's tough. I think that's one of the hardest things. I think from a mental health standpoint, social media can be such a great tool, and the internet can be such a great tool. I mean, even you and I speaking right now is because of the
Mhm.
internet and social media. We wouldn't be able to connect with as many people as we can, but there's also a really double-edged sword that is really hurting society. Um,
Mhm.
but like I said, just with fantasy land, with just everything. It's just, and it's actually even, I feel like it's crazy now, is I think it's actually getting worse now with AI. Because there's even certain like people and profiles that are online now that aren't even, they're not even real people.
Right. Yeah,
It's
that scares the heck out of me. Mhm.
crazy. And so you could actually go into uh and find, like, have these quote unquote artificial relationships with other human beings, and they're not, yeah, it's so scary.
Wow.
It's so crazy. And just with technology can be so great, and technology can be so scary too as well. We got off on a tangent, but yes, right.
Well, it's really important because now, talking about that, because your business now is all online, so that had to be a huge adjustment for you. And I know as someone, I had my own physical therapy office for 18 years, and I closed it in 2017. And then when I was hearing, with COVID and all these people are going online, it's like, how in the world did they do that? How? So I realized, I actually relaunched my practice, just a soft launch online, so I do see some people, but it's like, how do you do that?
Yep. So for me, my experience was, from a belief standpoint, is like, how am I going to get them, how am I going to be able to service my clients just as good as in person. And what I discovered is I could actually do it better because again, it was the switch in perspective, it was a switch in the model. We were more focused on to what they were doing outside of the gym on a
Mm-hmm.
24-hour basis rather than the 3 hours that I saw them in the gym. It was a complete 180. And so but it also allowed me to work with like I said, like we're in Italy, we're in Korea. It's like we're able to work with people outside of my 5 mile radius.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really a benefit moving forward. I
Mm-hmm.
just had my first son, who is autistic that we didn't know at the time. But during COVID, it was hard. Seisha ended up getting laid off in her uh, career. And so we had our first kid. She ended up getting laid off. We got shut down because of COVID, got put on restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
Just we had some family get ill during that time too as well. We lost our dog. Like that whole year 2020 was extremely challenging,
Mm-hmm.
many different ways for myself and our family. And looking back again, it's like a lot of it was some blessings in disguise, and
Mm-hmm.
never saw it that way during that moment. And so you guys got to understand. So it's like there are things that are going to come to test you. There are situations that are going to hurt. There are going to be things where you're very, very confused and wondering like what's going to happen. I would just encourage you. It's like it's worth fighting for. Just keep going. Things
Mm-hmm.
will work themselves out. Maybe not in the way that you thought that they would, but they will. As long as you keep pursuing improvement, and that's the biggest thing about it. Is like we're not necessarily ever going to find an end result. You should just get better. Martial arts. That's I think is one of the biggest things. Is like I have a lot of people that are in BJJ. It's like you don't win. Like if you're competing in tournaments and things like that, but it's like it's an art. You just get better at it. You just continue to get better, and then once you learn a new skill set, then there's another set of skills.
Mm-hmm.
Skill set, then there's another set of skills. And what's so funny, I actually saw you'll appreciate this. It's like when you're a white belt, you're like, I'm just here to just like learn and experience. It's like I don't know anything, I'm just here to learn, right? And you go through all these progressions of your belts, and as you get higher and higher in your rankings, you'll see that your confidence gets up. It's like, oh, and then there's a point in time where, oh, I think I'm really good. And then it was so funny. A white belt thinks, hey, I'm just here to learn and get better. And then by the time they've done the complete cycle and they've actually gotten their black belt, it's the exact same thing. I'm just here to learn and get better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you get to these higher levels and you just realize it's like, oh my gosh, I still have so much more to learn. Even
There's
though
so much more. Mm-hmm.
even though I've come so far, I'm still just like a white belt. I'm just here to learn and get better. I thought that
But
was really
isn't that a great analogy and philosophy of life itself?
absolutely. And it's just again, it's like you can take this thing as far as you want, but you have to make the decision to do that. Are you going to be the type of person that just sits back and lets life go by? Or are you really going to attack this with ambition and tenacity uh, and looking as like, like, what do I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's like that. That's okay. Some people are kind of like that, and some people are super aggressive like that. But uh, wherever you're at, it's like I'm here to tell you guys, it's like there's more if you want more. If not, and if you're cool, okay. But like it's completely up to you guys. So
Well, David, how can people get a hold of you? How can they work with you?
So the best way to get a hold of me is we do not have a website. The only way to be able to reach me is through our social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram. It's david.f.falco. That's the best, fastest way. That's the platform that I'm most active on. We do have our YouTube channel, Inner Anthem Academy, but that'd be the best way. So you could just slide into the DMs and send
Mm-hmm.
me a message there. So that's where I'm most active at.
I find it fascinating because I've interviewed several people recently who don't have a website. They just use Instagram, and it's probably a lot cheaper in the long run. Saves you a
Absolutely.
lot of money.
So same thing like with technology. Technology is always evolving. And so that was even when I first got started. Like, oh, it had to have a website, and then had to use WordPress and had to learn how
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And it's like by the time you learn it, it's like it gets to a point where it's unnecessary. And so
Mm-hmm.
things are always evolving. Life is always evolving. Darwin, this is one of my favorite quotes. Darwin talks about it's not the strongest species that survives, it's not the smartest species that survives, it's the species that adapts the best. And as long as you're willing to go with the flow, learn and adapt, change, adjust, get better, improve, like you're going to be okay. if you're willing to do that.
Okay,
Sure.
well, I was going to ask you if you had one final thought for the audience, but you beat me to it. And I think that's the perfect quote and a great way to wrap up.
Yeah, make mistakes. Make mistakes. Stop trying to avoid them. It's like, because you're not going to get better. You need to make mistakes for you to get better. So, and I know that takes courage, but you're going to be a better person on the other side.
Make mistakes and get out of your comfort zone, right?
So, absolutely.
David, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you and having you spend your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, and everybody, thank you so much for listening. I told you it was going to be a great show. Do share it with all of your friends, your family. There's so much motivation. There's so much positive information in this episode. And I think that we can all learn from it and help make this a better world. I certainly hope so. And remember, go ahead, make your mistakes and get out of your comfort zone. You will be amazed what you really can do. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. Whoops, no. Stop, Cheryl. Hang on a minute. I almost ended the meeting. Let me see, recording. So